All right, welcome everyone to day 4 of the Safe to Be Seen challenge. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Today is our topic of embodied leadership. So, embodiment. We're finally getting into the body. I've been hinting at it the past 3 days, and today we're really focusing on why this method of how I work with people is so important, right? So, we've been talking a lot about more of the mental pieces of awareness around our blocks, awareness around the personal identities or expectations or shoulds that we hold, and really becoming aware is a mental process, right? And that's important. That's really our minds need to understand and rewire stories, and we have to deal with the mind so that it can be put at ease. But what I know is that one of the fastest ways of really building these muscles around our visibility, feeling safe to be seen, is through the wisdom of our bodies, these powerful vessels, because our body's wisdom is so smart, even past our minds, right? Like we tend to think of like our minds as being so smart, but think about it. Our bodies, the wisdom that lies within our bodies will feel pain when they're uncomfortable. Our bodies will feel hungry when it wants food. Our bodies will feel a little flutter if we're in love, right? And many of you might be experiencing uncomfortable feelings around visibility where you can feel like your nervous system amping up or your heart rate, your heartbeat really like elevating, right? Because you've got excitement and like that that pressure, right? When you're about ready to go live. And so these things aren't good or bad. They're simply an invitation for us to learn how to work with the body. So, embodied leadership, so important because our body's wisdom has a lot to teach us. And in the groups that I have guest mentored in, so I've gone into a lot of other people's programs to support their clients around visibility, I oftentimes get this question: what is the fastest way for me to move through a block if I'm feeling nervous about going live, or if I'm feeling nervous about recording a video, or if I'm feeling nervous about sharing my story on Facebook, or whatever way of leadership, right, that you're showing up as? And my response is always get in the body. So do some sort of body related exercise. And so today's invitation as part of the day 4 challenge was to actually begin to start to get in touch with your body through a really fun exercise that I like to invite people to explore, which is to begin playing with these different archetypes or different energies in our bodies that allow for us to be able to tap into different parts of ourselves. And so I'll tell you in a minute a little bit more about that exercise if you haven't yet looked into it or you haven't done it yet. But first, what I want to explain is the power of using our embodiment as a way of giving ourselves permission to show up in all those multifaceted parts of who we are. And the reason why this is important is related to what we were talking about yesterday when it comes to identities, right? So we can really put ourselves in these boxes of who we think we should be as leaders or entrepreneurs or as women in general. And what that does is that prevents us from really showing our full range of who we are, or as I like to say, our full range of self-expression. So the full spectrum, and none of us is the same, right? But our full spectrum of what is a natural way for us to express ourselves. So again, I know I've referenced children probably several times throughout this challenge, but I'm going to bring it back to a child because when we are children, before we really unlearn, before we learn and then have to unlearn now, right, as adults, but before we learn to prevent our self expression, we are all sorts of things, right? We're laughing and dreaming one moment and maybe screaming and being loud, and the next moment we are introspective and really just kind of like enjoying and looking around, or the next moment we're throwing a tantrum and we're really angry, and we are really utilizing all these different parts of ourselves, which is our natural way of being. Unfortunately, because of these expectations, identities, society, how we have taught to be, and sometimes and many times, right, ways of feeling like we need to be in order to be safe or receive love, these our self-expression really just gets tamped down. And what happens when it gets tamped down is that we really feel this like block, right? Like if you think of a hose and it's got all this like powerful energy, which is your full self-expression, your radiance that wants to shine through, and yet it's kinked, like it's going to have this buildup, right? And that buildup is uncomfortable. And that buildup will find other ways to start to come out. And it's not going to be pretty, right? It's going to be explosive. And what we want to aim for is for you to have that flow, that of energy and natural self-expression, whatever that looks like for you. And so how we begin to do that is to start to feel safe within our own bodies through these embodiment type practices. So, the exercise for today was to begin to explore these three different energies or archetypes that has been the thread throughout my work for a really long time, even back when I first started my coaching business about 10 years ago, and I was focused on transformational general self-care coaching. And I realized really quickly that there were these parts of ourselves that we were preventing, that we, and I myself included, to be seen in the world as. And so those energies, and before I share the different archetypes or energies, I just want to say that these aren't the only things that live inside of us, right? But for simplicity's sake, I like to kind of categorize in these three different ways so that we can very specifically explore these three very different ways of being in our self-expression and in our visibility. Because essentially, that's what happens, right? We embody our leadership by getting comfortable with our full range of self expression, and then that can come out in that really beautiful flow, very authentically and naturally in our visibility and how we show up. Okay. So, for simplicity's sake, these three archetypes, I call them feminine leadership archetypes. They've been called many other things, video vixen archetypes, if I'm speaking specifically to video, but essentially they are archetypal energies. And I specify them specifically for women. They could be used in all different contexts of varying genders. So these energies are the playful child, the radiant rebel, and the sexy feminine. And today's exercise or invitation that I provided you was three different songs that will help guide you in getting in touch with these different energies. So I shared with you for the playful child was really that upbeat, fun, light energy of Cyndi Lauper's "Girls Just Want to Have Fun." Then I shared with you for the Radiant Rebel, which is really like feisty, powerful, more outward energy, fiery. Christina Aguilera's Fighter song. And then the third for the Sexy Feminine, which is more of that flowing, grounded presence energy, of being able to just really receive. I shared with you Sade's song By Your Side. So if you haven't done those exercises yet through playing the songs and just giving yourself permission to close your eyes if you want, that's usually the kind of safest way that you can begin to explore what your body wants to do, and play the song and just allow your body to naturally move in whatever way it wants to that song. So there's no right or way to do that, right or wrong way to do this. But what we don't want to do, so maybe there is a wrong way. There's no wrong way. I want you to just make this whatever you need. However, what's most powerful, the better way of saying it, is if you just release all expectations of what it should look like, right? So we're practicing what we learned yesterday around identities and shedding the shoulds, and now embodying it in a way that can actually be physically practicing, letting go of any need to perform or do anything for anyone. And so just allowing your body to move and noticing through each of these songs. And maybe you just want to start with one that maybe feels like it would be the easiest. That's a great place to start so you don't get discouraged. And just notice. And really, after you're done with the song, the prompts for the journaling today was to really write down, how do you feel? What did you notice in your body? Were there any images or sensations or thoughts or just anything that came up for you during that movement practice? And what this is going to do is to just allow you to begin to really notice and to get present to how comfortable you are, and maybe areas for growth or areas for relaxation more so, to be able to fully express in these areas. Okay, so some are going to be easier, some are going to be harder, and there's no right or wrong, and they're just invitations for you to take a look at. I'm going to explain a little bit more about these archetypes. However, before I go there, what I want you to begin to understand is that I'm trying to think of the best way to put this, is to, if you are sometimes very comfortable in a certain area, this can also be a sign, not necessarily always, but what I've seen, especially in ambitious type of women, which I know you all are, is that oftentimes the area that we're most comfortable in, we kind of go ovaries to the wall or balls to the wall, right? As the saying is. And we go into overdrive in that area. And the reason that we do that is because that could be one of our identities that we have adopted that has felt like we should be, or is safe, or has worked for us, or whatever, right? And so just notice that tendency to go into overdrive in some of these energies within yourself. Now, you might say, okay, well, what's the bad thing about that, Jess? Well, the thing about that is that if we have a tendency to go into overdrive, again, it goes back to those expectations, and it puts pressure on you to feel like you need to be something, which takes a lot of energy, which isn't authentic, and is going to either drain you or cause you to burn out, right? Because you're just using so much energy pushing and feeling like you need to be in that energy all the time. And the days when you're not, you haven't developed your capacity to be in this full self-expression of dialing that back and allowing yourself to just be with whatever you are. And so oftentimes what will happen is that we hide on those days, okay? We hide, we don't commit to the visibility, we don't show up. So just wanted to make note of that because it's an important point when it comes to noticing the spectrum that we're on. And again, the goal is that it's just a full range of self-expression, because that is going to be the ultimate freedom for you to be able to just show up as you are in whatever inspired way you are feeling that day. If it's big, awesome. If it's not, awesome. And just allowing yourself to be in that place of really just feeling good enough. Okay. All right. So let's get into a little bit more of the details around each of these three archetypes. And before I do, I'm just going to take a sip of water. And just go ahead for you, if you haven't got out a journal yet, notebook, just go ahead and get that out to take any notes, because what tends to happen is when I talk about these archetypes, because they are so well defined, they really help us get in touch with awareness around these different parts of ourselves, and how we are expressing them or not expressing them, expressing or suppressing, right? And so I want you to really start to just take whatever notes or become aware when you're hearing me talk about them. Do any red flags go off, or do any green lights? Oh yeah, I'm actually really good at this one, or oh, I overdo it on this area, and just become aware, right? Again, no judgment, no needing to make extreme meaning or assumptions about anything, but we do want to get present to these different energies within you. And yeah, okay, so let's dive in. Let's dive in. There's so much good stuff here. So, first is the playful child. And the playful child energy, as I mentioned, is really that lightness, that ability within all of us to laugh and joke and have fun and really experience flow, right? Flow and joy and celebration, and really um really have that feeling when we're showing up in our visibility of oh, this can actually be easy. Yeah. So it brings the ease, brings the play, brings the fun. And what I love to really point out is, think about a time when you have been around somebody, and maybe it's somebody that you know right now, or maybe there was just a time that you hung out with somebody, or somebody that you've watched on video, or a leader that you follow that is just so much fun. And there's this ease around them and this playfulness, and you can't, you know, be silly enough. And there's just this freedom to play and goof around and be a dork. And how good that feels, right? And the reason why I want to point that out is because so oftentimes the reason that we shy away from this embodying the playful child energy is because we are afraid that we're not going to be taken seriously, that we're not going to be seen as an expert, that people are going to think we're for me, a dumb blonde or a dumb woman. Dumb blonde was something that I got a lot throughout my life. And maybe it wasn't even a lot, but it hurt the times that I did get it. It really embedded itself into me and caused me to really want to ignore this area of myself that actually is truly one of my gifts, and that my clients have reflected to me. Playful child is one of the reasons they love working with me. And so just notice within yourself on a scale, let's do a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being that this is really you are completely suppressing your playfulness, you're completely suppressing this area of you when you show up in your leadership, to 10, which is that you are totally fully expressed in your playfulness, and it's just raring to go. And it's probably, if you're a 10, more than likely the thing that you default to, that it's yes, all the time, play all day, every day, that it just feels fully open. So just notice within yourself, and take note in your journal on a scale of 1 to 10. And as you do that, as you get present to how you show up in your leadership as the playful child, or if you do, then I want to talk about why it is important to have our playfulness embodied. Why is it important in our visibility? And the reason that our playfulness is important, and I kind of mentioned this, but let me just specifically say, is first and foremost, people are like want to be around leaders who provide a sense of ease, who they feel like they can just be dorky around, for lack of a better word. And by dorky around, what I mean is that there's room for mistakes, there's room for errors, there's room to, like a child, play, right? Experiment, see what happens. And that is so important for a growth learning atmosphere. And so it's so important in our visibility that we really cultivate this playful part of ourselves so that we can provide that type of an environment for our people, but also for ourselves, because it's way more fun to release those expectations of needing to be perfect for ourselves as well, right? And then we get to show up and just have fun and know that we don't have to have all the answers. And it just makes work and visibility so much more joyful. So that's the first part, providing ease. The second part of why Playful Child is so important is because when it comes to our visibility, when our playful child is open, it actually connects us to our ability to show people what is possible, to show people the vision, to inspire them through that really like inspirational, fun energy of like, yes, you can do it. I can show you how to get to where you want to be, and to paint that picture vividly for them, right? Think of a child. They're so creative, and it opens up this energy of like, anything's possible. The world is my oyster, really like bright eyed and bushy tailed, as my grandpa used to say. So it is so essential. The playful child is so essential for being able to connect in to show our people what is possible. And I also want to say that going back to that sense of ease, I want to point out like there is so much hard stuff in life, right? That if you want to magnetize someone, your right people, or inspire your audience to want to work with you or to do the work that you're advocating for, how much more fun or how much more willing do you think that they're going to be to say yes if it doesn't feel hard, if we're able to show them that there can be a path of ease, right? So that's one of the things that I've really attempted to do throughout this challenge. It's how I promoted this challenge, was that visibility doesn't have to be hard, can actually be no pushing required, okay? Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, right? But it doesn't have to be hard. And how can you just bring a little bit more ease through activating your playful child? Okay, so that's the playful child. I could go on and on about these archetypes, but I'm going to get on to our second archetype, which is the radiant rebel. Radiant rebel. So the radiant rebel is that fiery energy within you, that really fierceness, the courageous, taking bold leaps, going after it. We might think of it as more of the output masculine energy, right? So external, as far as like the really like doing energy. It's also the part of you that speaks up, that uses her voice. Not that the playful child or the sexy feminine doesn't speak up. They just do it in a different way. Whereas the radiant rebel has no shame. They're just like, here's what it is, speak the truth, really stands up for herself. And this energy is like, think of that person that you see that is just like unapologetic. Yeah. Like, one of the things that I'm thinking of, like Brene Brown, I think is a really good example of the radiant rebel. Like, she really is just unapologetic in the way that she talks about things. She's really kind still, right? So she brings in like the other pieces, of course, of her self-expression. and the different archetypes, but she is just really bold in the way that she speaks about what she speaks about, and she's not apologizing about it. And a lot of what she says, people, you know, like we probably don't see these comments now because she's like so huge, right? And she has a lot of raving fans, but I think she's spoken outwardly about how she's gotten a lot of flack in the past and probably still now. And she pulls in pieces in her work that a lot of people might disagree around. And she pulls in pieces around race, and she pulls in pieces that, like, you know, most people maybe wouldn't put her in that box initially around. And she just like goes for it. So for me, I love Brene Brown. Maybe you do too. And she's a great example of that courageous, radiant rebel. And so, why are we drawn to these types of people? Even if, now think about this, there's people that you don't agree with, but they are just so bold in what they're saying, and they truly own it and they truly believe it, right? And they're standing up and they're saying, here's what I believe and here's why. And they just have that passion, that fiery passion. It's contagious, right? Like, even if we disagree with them, like for me, I'm not a huge Gary Vee fan. I think he is like super annoying. He interrupts people. I've watched interviews and I'm just like, oh my God, calm the F down, right? However, I can respect that he fully owns that fierceness inside of him. And that to me is inspiring, right? So, what I want to invite you into is to remember that oftentimes why we shy back from the Radiant Rebel is because we're really worried about hurting people. We're worried about turning people off from our message. We're worried about being too much. We're worried about, being seen as a bitch. There's so many different elements to this archetype, especially if you have been identifying, like me, when I shared around the personal identities, as like a good girl, which is just steeped in our culture, right? That women should be good girls, should be nice. More than likely, you probably are really shying away from this radiant rebel. And there is a lot of power there. There is a lot of power. So just get present. Right now, we're going to do the 1 through 10 again. 1 being that you are really suppressing this side of you, and 10 being that your radiant rebel is fully unleashed, fully expressed. And just note on a scale of 1 to 10 where you're at. And so as you do that, I just want to, again, like I did with the playful child, ground in even more tangibly these pieces around the radiant rebel and why they matter when we talk about visibility. Number 1, the radiant rebel is going to get you through the hard times. She is going to get you through the hard times because of that courage, that courageous fire that's cultivated on the inside. But the courageous ability to speak up and to build the muscle necessary to care more about your message, about what you stand for, than potential criticism. Okay? So that's number 1. Number 2, I already mentioned that that fiery energy will inspire people to respect you as a leader who has an opinion, a leader who is not just wishy-washy and afraid to take a stand, but really puts her stake in the ground and says, here's my truth. Here's what I believe. I may not know everything, but this has been my experience, and I invite you to listen and maybe even join me in doing this work for yourself, whatever it is that you do, right? So that's the second thing, is it really helps you take a stand as a leader and be seen as a leader without having to prove, right? You're just exercising that part of yourself. So those are the 2 biggest pieces around the radiant rebel. Actually, 1 more. The last thing I want to mention is that this is the activation energy that a lot of people need to actually wake up. So I'm sure you have clients or potential clients that are asleep to the fact that like they need to do something or XYZ is going to happen, or they, may not even know that they have an issue. And you really want to show them that if they let this continue, that this is the potential, and so it really helps to wake people up. And a lot of people need that wake up. So it's an activation. I like to think of it as an activation that you are inspiring people to actually move forward, to actually say yes, to take that next action and to follow through. So, really important. Okay, so let's end with the sexy feminine. Sexy feminine is the energy of that peace, just allowing ourselves to be, receiving, and really heart connection. So, this is the energy that is also related to vulnerability. So, if we think of like, I called this the sexy feminine, right? One of the main reasons is because our sexual energy and that ability to merge with another person in union in a sexual I don't want to say sexual act, that sounds dumb, but having sex, right, with someone, when we're in a sexual act with someone, that energy of vulnerability is key, right? If we're not able to fully open up ourselves to be exposed, then there's going to be a block there. And so our sexy feminine energy is that ability to feel comfortable being exposed, allowing our hearts to be cracked wide open, to really show our people that we are open and vulnerable, and most of all, that we're human, right? Because being vulnerable is being human. And I really want you to see this as a strength. So I'll just say that a lot of times people are very conflicted. I found this is the most challenging archetype for us to work with, which makes sense, right? We've been told so many different things around, like, even sexual energy is not welcome around business or not welcome in our leadership. And I will tell you that it is, along with the other two archetypes, everything. We need it all. If we're denying this part of ourselves, then we are denying a huge piece to be able to connect with other people and to also connect with ourselves. Um, so let me give you an example for this energy. Think of, I don't have a specific person coming to mind right now, but just think of someone in your community or a friend of yours that just kind of like walks into a room and is like radiant without even having to say anything. Just their presence is really beautiful. You feel so like comfortable around them, and like they're just a model for what it means to fully own that they can just be and be good enough. That is the sexy feminine energy. And the physical look of that is going to like vary, right? Because we think of, like, everybody has their own versions of sexy, just like everybody has their own versions of the radiant rebel and of the playful child. Like, so just keep in mind as well, like, these are energies that are unique to you. Because a lot of times people get really conflicted and confused around the sexy, what that's supposed to look like. And so here, it is just really focusing on that vulnerability, that connection, the presence. So being around people that embody the sexy feminine, it's really juicy. It is an invitation to take care of yourself, to prioritize your needs, self-care, right? Really coming from filling your own cup. And it's also an invitation to be vulnerable, to share things that are not like always looked at as things that business leaders would share, but to really come from that human place. And because of that, I bet you feel more connected to those people. I bet you actually respect them more. And so, one of the things that we really ignore, if we're ignoring this part of ourselves, right, the sexy feminine, one of the reasons is because we feel like it's not welcomed, or we don't want to be seen as like broken, or we don't want to be seen as somebody who's weak, right? Because leaders aren't supposed to be weak. And there's nothing stronger, actually, than opening ourselves up and sharing the things that we've been through and being able to paint that picture of how we came through the challenge, and even being honest sometimes and saying, like, you know what, I don't have it all figured out, but here's what I am learning in the process. That's also another form of sexy feminine embodiment, is being able to step into that form of vulnerable leadership. So I'm just giving you lots of examples here as far as like what this looks like. And so right now, go ahead and write down, again, on a scale of 1 to 10, where you're at. 1 being totally suppressed, your sexy feminine is just like, nope. Or 10, where you're fully in that place of sharing vulnerably, being able to just show up, to receive, take care of yourself. So let's ground this in again as far as why the sexy feminine is important to your visibility. So I already mentioned it, but I'm going to call it out. Number one, first and foremost, it is the ability to connect with your people, heart to heart, to connect on that human level, to show them, hey, I get you, I get your pain, I understand, to really open your heart and be able to do that. The second piece is to be able to be vulnerable, to share your struggles, to share the things that have been challenging for you. Your people want to hear that. They want to know that you're human because this actually shows that you get them, right? And then to paint the picture of your journey and what that honestly looks like, so that they're inspired, that they don't always have to be stuck, right, in this place. And the third piece that is so important is the sexy feminine just will allow you to really prioritize taking care of you. She doesn't have anything to prove. She can just be good enough. And this is where it's so important, the inner cultivation of our embodied leadership, right? That really allows us to show up and be radiant and magnetic. And so this is prioritizing you, drawing healthy boundaries, being able to, not overwork just for the sake of like doing it and like putting yourself out there, right? But to really find that place of alignment that feels good within you. Super important things. Okay, so those are the 3 archetypes. Really, I invite you, I'll just say this, even though I know you already wrote down your numbers, but if you didn't or you want to go back, I just really invite you to be honest as far as where you're at in these, and it's totally okay. This is a journey, right? And our various forms of self-expression are going to change and flow. I know there's parts of my life where I feel way more activated around having my, megaphone and shouting from the rooftops my bold messages and really like standing for things, right? And then I have my seasons where I'm a lot more internal and sharing more of my vulnerability and connecting with my people that way. And yet the key is that no matter what season you're in, you're not putting pressure on yourself to be a certain way, that it's natural, right? And so that's the gift of these archetypes, of tuning into them within yourself. And it's a journey of cultivating your full self expression and embodied leadership. And so, yeah, super excited. I will see you all back here for our final day tomorrow. And just inviting you, if you haven't done the embodiment exercise of dancing to one or all of the three songs, not even dancing, but moving, allowing your body to naturally move, go ahead and do that. And I'm looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow. All right. Bye for now.